Hi everyone, welcome to Colorbar. I'm Kim Updike here with Betsy Davis, as always.
Hello, hello. Happy St. Patty's Day.
Happy St.
It won't be
Patty's Day.
St. Patty's Day when we film this, but it's St. Patty's Day today.
Right, so
Yeah.
we're celebrating.
Yes.
And I'm very excited about today's conversation, but before we get to it, in addition to St. Patty's Day, we're also marking our 1-year anniversary
It's so crazy.
of recording Colorbar.
It's so fun.
It is so fun.
I was driving over here today and I was like, it's St. Patrick's Day, which means April Fool's Day is around the corner, which is when we released our first episode. So I was
Yes.
like, oh my God, it's our anniversary.
It's our anniversary. I got one of those memory photos up on my phone. This is my Air phone here.
Yes.
And the other thing, which I thought was very timely with our guest today, Rich, who I will introduce in just a second, was, we had Glimpse this time last year, and it was all about personalization.
Yep, hyper-personalization.
Hyper-personalization and personalization in the marketplace, and how personalization has been with us for a long time, but it still feels like a new conversation. So, what's different, what's going on, and nobody better than to talk about personalization and business and markets in general is Rich Askam, who is with us today. Hi, Rich.
April the 1st is my birthday as well, just for reference.
Oh my goodness.
Love that.
Well, happy birthday very soon.
Yes. So we are super excited to talk all things personalization, your book, your business journeys, your life journey. So super excited just to dive in and have you here.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So I joined Rich on his podcast Print Island, I don't know, a few weeks ago. And I coined him the founding father of personalization, whether he liked it or not. But then you mentioned the book, and he shared with us a manuscript of what he had started. And I've decided now that he is the founding father of evolution, maybe evolution of personalization. So yeah, I'm excited to start the conversation.
Yes.
So Rich, before we dive right in, because we were talking before we even went live, and I'm like,
Yes.
We're going to give away all the goods, we're going to have all the good conversation. So just quickly introduce yourself to the Colorbar viewers, about yourself briefly, and then we're going to dig into all of it as we talk today.
Well, as you've already introduced me as a founding father, my name is Alexander Hamilton. and there's a million things I haven't done, but just you wait. So I'm Richard Askam. Most people call me Rich, which is always lovely because then I know that they know me. And we'll get into that because your name is the least personal thing about you unless you know something about that person as an individual. But most people call me Rich, and fairly well known, I think, on the printing circuit in the US, the trade show circuit. I've been a speaker out there for a long time, mainly because of the stuff that I appear to have done over the last 20 years, which has sort of led a bit of a pathway, I think, towards the world of personalization that we're still in. And as you rightly say, Kim, learning something new about every day. But yeah, I've really enjoyed what I've done so far, and I'm looking forward to what's next.
When I was reading what you sent, you were saying if somebody would have asked me 25 years ago, I would have said I was in the wine industry. And since then, you've done many things. But let's just start with what got you started in personalization, which is the wine industry. And I
thought we were going to start with wine because I would have been right in there.
I mean, listen, we will end there.
We will end there.
We will end our day there together.
Very good. But yes, a wine merchant. That's kind of like where it all started in your family business.
Yeah, but I think what
right.
also resonated with me is that coming from the print industry, so many viewers that are watching are from a family business, and many of them are the next generation of that family business, and you lived and breathed that, the ups and downs of all of that. So take us back to 30 years ago, even before that, whenever your father started in that journey for you.
That's really funny, actually, because I hadn't, and because that parallel had never been drawn between the industry that I was in and the industry that I find myself in now. But yeah, son of a father, it's a tough gig when you're in a family business to try and direct attention away from the past towards the future. Because that lovely expression, "That's the way we've always done it," is something that I'd like that on my tombstone, I think. But it's quite hard. In fact, it's borderline impossible to shift generational change along unless necessity requires it. And 30 years ago, I was happily and as you said, Betsy, I would have described myself as a wine merchant. If somebody else, it was a very easy answer. We sold wine. We imported it from around the world into the UK. We sold it to the sort of restaurant, hospitality trade, restaurants, hotels. At a time really where wine was still a luxury product. My dad was a little bit of a pathfinder really. There's a number of things that I'm recognizing in myself now that I saw in him then. He's the sort of guy that would jump off a cliff and build a plane on the way down. That was the way his mind worked. And I grew up in that world, so it's no surprise really. And strange enough, my daughter is very similar as well. That we quite like day one. We quite like the day of change. And so when a pivot is necessary, I don't see it as fearful. I see it as exciting. And as over that period of time, over 34, my dad started this business in the 50s. So, it had been around an awful long time. And so I came in as as son of a father and said, I'm going to change everything. I know better than you, Dad, and obviously I didn't. And the irony is now, I can see now why he was right. But at the time I couldn't see anything other than wrong. And it was an interesting time, but it got me into that beautiful world of wine, which there's two sides to the wine business. It's a bit like the print industry. There's the wine business and the business of wine. So the wine business is the lovely one where you stand around in vineyards and taste wine and isn't this lovely, and then the sun sets and you all have a lovely dinner. And then the business of wine is trying to sell it to people for enough money to make some money so you can buy some more wine. Print's not dissimilar, so there's a lot of parallels there. I hadn't thought of it that way.
One of the things that I mentioned to you, that some of the things that you've said in your reflection part of your book resonated with me, and you were talking about how businesses don't die overnight, it happens slowly, and it happens because people aren't moving, and you're not changing, and it made me think about a lot of things. Like I was just saying to somebody the other day, like I feel like I'm at a stage in life right now where I'm shedding all of this stuff. Everybody's commented on my hair. I even chopped my hair off.
Yes.
But like there's just those.
Me too.
You chopped your hair off too, Rich. I like it. But there are those times where you're like, it's all of a sudden you kind of look up and it's changed. My question for you is, when you talk about it changes or it painfully kind of ends because you haven't changed fast enough, do you think that the print industry, marketers, do you think we're changing as fast as we should right now?
Undoubtedly no, because nobody ever does. I mean, my father had this wonderful expression that he called the elegant death, where you just drift towards the end, and you don't really notice it. And when none of us are clever enough, none of us are bright enough to be able to spot the day of change. It's like ding, 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 ding. Recession started. We've got to change everything. Whatever the change point is, none of us are clever enough to spot it. But the key is not to spot it. The key is to understand the behavior that's needed when you recognize it. And as human beings, we're actually quite appalling at hanging on to our own decisions and backing them for longer than we should do. And then getting to the change point and going, we should have done this 6 months ago. And whether that's business, whether that's personal, whether that's relationships, doesn't really matter. We we made this decision. So I'm gonna support my own decision.
I'm hanging on to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
and
not
then
letting it go, people. I'm right.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, Betsy, I think the print industry is no different to any industry in that you would like it to work, but there is a point where beyond which you recognize there is no sense that it can work, and then you start to change. Of course, logic would determine, in hindsight, we're all trillionaires in hindsight, right? If you'd done it sooner, you wouldn't have been at that point. But I also believe that point of standing on the cliff edge, leaning over and trying to keep your balance is when you do your best thinking. Because if you have too much time, there's an old quote, I can't remember who it was, but a best plan has not enough time and not enough money. And then you have to be creative. You have too much time and too much money, you're not creative. You just buy your way out of a problem. So I think I think, and some businesses will slip over that cliff edge. That's a natural happenstance too, by the way. But I think getting to that point, again, there's a lovely old expression that just jump and a net will appear. And I like that. I live a little bit like that. I don't, the days when I don't enjoy that, but the days when I do. So it's the risk that we take as business owners.
But I think that's also the exciting entrepreneurial part of business is the jump. It is jumping in. And to your point, if you have all the time in the world, you rarely make something better. You're just, usually it gets stuck somewhere in analysis paralysis because you didn't either force yourself and there wasn't that moment, which to your point, Rich, never really shows up like, I'm your moment,
Yeah, exactly.
Take it.
It's a bit like creativity, Kim, as well, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's like, right, sit down and have a good idea now.
Right. Okay.
It's not really how it works, is it?
Yes.
It's not. But also in the book, in the excerpt that we got to read, I loved the part about, kind of like necessity being the mother of invention. Everything from pivoting to the private wine labels. When you kind of took that approach and had to differentiate your business to bring it back in the market, I thought that, and the part about being, adaptable, like business owners and businesses need to be adaptable and be able to look and see, this isn't going to work the way it used to. If I still want to be here, I have to think differently. If you want different, do different. And so I just thought some of that journey, even into the personalized gift business, and just how you took that entrepreneurial journey, and probably by jumping first and asking questions after.
Always, yeah, that's definitely my MO. And I think it's really important for business owners to understand that if they sit and wait for their customers to change, they're going to be waiting a long time. So, and we as customers, take our business hats off and put our consumer hat on. We also do that. We will change, with the wind. So, as a business owner, you have to be pliable and nimble and aspirational almost enough to want to change with your customers, so that you can prolong that journey. For me, it was necessity because I could see our business sliding out the door because of increased competition in the very channel that we had dominated for so long, but it was wandering away. And so the addition of customized labels for those restaurants, those hotels that I described, where they could have their own wine, it gave us back some time, because our USP returned, and we bought ourselves some time to be able to stay in that market and see if there was another way that we could do it. So every one of those steps along that journey was about, in my head, it wasn't about being cute. It was about claiming back some time to be able to do something about what was quite clearly at that point an obviously declining business. So yeah, it was as you say, necessity is the mother of invention. I'm still getting used, by the way, but just so you know, you'll see me grin every now and again. It's because when you say, in your book, I'm like, oh God, yeah, I've got a book. I hadn't thought about that.
Well, and every time I've said it, I'm like, well, I don't know if we call it a book yet, or it will be a book. I'm going to call it your book, whether you like it or not.
He said he's got 40,000 words.
Yes, you're getting all the PR for it.
You're getting
One thing I want you to kind of go into this a little bit, but one thing I also want our viewers to hear that I think also really resonates with our industry and many, like the dining industry that we work with, the retail industry, and we see companies all around us having to do these massive layoffs and these things happening. And you went through that same journey before you came to this personalized wine label space, but that's a really scary place and a sad place for a lot of people to be in, where you're having to make these huge changes because of where your business has gone. But I think the story that resonated with me as I was reading it was every time those moments happen, this also happens right behind it. And I think we just all have to just be okay with those scary spaces to know that, like, this is what drives the future and what drives it next. Can you talk a little bit about that part of your journey? And then I want to hear from you, because you've got this creative mind. How did you get to that place of knowing that this was what was going to get you to
where you needed to be?
Yeah, and get you to that stable place for your business?
It was doubly hard, I think, for me as well, because as it was my father's business that was coming to an end in that particular iteration, I'd been around that business since I was a kid. Coming in on a Saturday morning with my dad and helping as a 5-year-old, because that's what 5-year-olds do. So I've known some of those staff members all my life, and they babysat for me, they looked after me. It was incredibly hard to face the reality that some of those people I was going to have to, let go, because there was no way that the business could change if we kept everything the same. You've got to clear the runway sometimes to let another plane take off, and that feeling was probably the worst. If you look for your top 5 shittiest days, pardon my French, that would be in the top 5 for me, because and largely not because of the change point, because actually, I'd already rationalized in my head that was the thing to do. So I'd made the decision. It wasn't that I was, wondering whether it was the right decision. It was that day when you have to look those people in the eye, and I did, and I made myself do it, because I thought this is something I need to do in order to be able to remember how it feels, because you can do these things at arm's length. This was the day, days before people got fired on Zoom calls and what have you. This was face to face. Some of them shook my hand, some of them didn't. And I can put my mind there right now and tell you how that felt. And it was awful, but in many ways, it was also the gateway to the next part of. I didn't know what was coming next. I just knew that something had to change, and so to take quite a large small business, if that makes sense. It was what would we be, 1999, turning over £1 million, so $1.5 million. Not small, but not big either. 22 members of staff, and then overnight it became me and a turnover of £60,000, because that was all I could keep. Everything. It was all retail focused, so when you close a store, you close down the income. And we had like 1 or 2 small accounts with restaurants and hotels that I kept, and so I kept that income. But interestingly, it became profitable overnight because I had no costs. So at that point, you start back at domino number 1 and start building again.
You had the vision of doing personalized wine labels. Yes. Which led you to why I called you the founding father of personalization, because it's the campaign that I think all of us across the world know. That opportunity led you to the Share a Coke opportunity. So I also thought about the twists and turns that life takes us on, that leads us to these places you never saw coming, and it feels like that's exactly what happened for you. Talk a little bit about that journey from wine labels to Coca-Cola.
You'll hear me say several times on this call today, I can hear my father's voice coming out of my mouth when I say this, but he used to say to me when I was a kid, if you look back on your working life and it's a straight line, you failed. So you should be able to wander. Know your way in, know your way out, but you should be able to wander and then see what else is in there. And actually, although some of those steps were necessity, that the movement from a retail business, shutting it down, to a wholesale business, growing that back out to quite a sizable wholesale business, but then needing a differentiator, which was the customized labels, that led us into gifting, which we hadn't been in before. Gifting is a different beast altogether, because people pay a different price for a gift than they do for a consumable. So suddenly there's more margin over here. So it was always the pursuit of margin, and the gas, if you like, that keeps a business alive, that these steps were made from. So they weren't purposeful, but they were necessary. And so when those customized labels one day became personalized labels, you think, okay, so this is something else that we could find some margin in to a certain extent. So my thinking was nowhere near as expansive as when you look back it appeared, because at the time you're in the tunnel, right? And you're trying to just keep going you're hoping that the light at the end of the tunnel is not a train coming in the opposite direction. So there's lots of things that went into that thought process. But at every stage, I did recognize the benefit of the change. And that day when personalized labels sort of appeared, really, and it was for one customer that wanted to, so could we do something a bit different? And it's like, well, what about if we put your name? Oh, that's a good idea, because this whole thing where we all receive gifts from companies, but they're all the same, So the point, the value is lost at the point of purchase because nobody's put any thought or any creativity into it.
And yours
So I
isn't
just
any
wanted to-
different than anybody else's. Like we all got the
Exactly.
same. We all got the same thing, so it doesn't really feel like
Exactly.
you know me, right?
Yep.
Exactly. And and I always joke that you come back after the Christmas holidays and you've got an office full of wine that you don't know who it's from and you don't know what it's for, but it's wine, right? So
Right.
so it's not the end of the world.
Right.
But we
you could have gotten
we-
a worse
we-
gift.
Exactly. We wanted to give a differentiator to our customers so that they used us because we provided them with, we were all making each other look better, if that makes sense. And then armed with that as a product, suddenly you've got a new gifting category of personalized gifts, which, as silly as it sounds now, did not exist back in those days. And being the adventurous soul that it turns out that I am, I started to talk to a number of the major retailers particularly in the e-commerce space in the UK. There's a company called Moonpig that you might be familiar with actually. I think they trade in the US now, but they're a greetings card company. So personalized greetings card, and they were like the top of the tree back at that time. So and I could see if you buy somebody a greetings card, or you buy somebody a gift, you got to buy them a card, right? So the same logic happens vice versa. So I went to see them with personalized champagne as a gift, and that started a ball rolling that ended up at the door of Coca-Cola. So it was quite strange times.
That's crazy. So talk about the email that you received.
So I'm sitting on a train going to London. It was November the 13th. I can remember it well. It was around about 11:30 in the morning. Not that I'm being specific, but I just had a coffee. And I'm sitting there minding my own business, laptop open, pretending to work like we all do when we're traveling. And in pops this email.
What year was this?
2013.
2013.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Share a Coke campaign had started in the UK and in Europe in 2013, but they had. It was successful, but there was a flaw in the plan in that they'd seeded bottles and cans into stores with 100 of the most popular names on them. And there you go, kids, go and find one. Well, what if you were 101? What if you were 201 and your name didn't exist? And in many ways, marketing isn't supposed to fail. Marketing isn't supposed to annoy more people than it pleases. And yet, inadvertently, they'd succeeded. And yes, they'd created a hunt, and it was brilliant when you found one, and all the social sharing that came from that. But what if you didn't? What if Betsy was spelled with a silent M at the beginning because your mother thought it was funny when you were born? So you would never get your bottle or your can. So this email drops in, and with that lovely question, would you be interested in partnering Coca-Cola to deliver the Share a Coke campaign? And you think, how long do I wait before I say yes? And because you want to be cool, right? You want to be, it's we're flirting now, but yeah. So 8 seconds was the answer before I said yes. And then I sent it again in case they didn't get the first one because I was a bit worried it would go into spam. So I wanted to make sure that they got my response. And it just sort of escalated from there and really quickly because they had this problem of how to get all of these names to people that couldn't find a bottle with their name on it. And I asked them when we met them, why me? Because I'm just a tall bloke with less hair than I used to have from the north of England. And they were dead honest. They said, we looked at the internet and everybody on the internet that sold a personalized bottle was supplied by you. So we just came to Domino One. And of course, they're an enormous company. I don't think there's a word big enough to describe how big Coca-Cola are.
Right.
But what they couldn't do was make one of anything. They could make 1 million and they could make a trillion, but they couldn't make one. So they needed somebody at that stage that could do the job that they needed to do. And then that's where it all started to get interesting when we created the website for them that allowed people to actually type their name in. And that's when really I would say it took up because then you could please everybody, right?
And we talk about technology and innovation, and I talked about are we moving fast enough? But I have to think and talk to us about how you pushed technology and innovation during this process and what that was like. Talk about twists and turns.
Yeah.
Talk about twists and turns. What was that like?
We're now on the windy road.
Yeah.
Oh, man alive. And if you think technology and innovation was involved in any shape or form, then you're very much mistaken because it was hope, it was sellotape, it was all the things that you think, okay, let's make this work. I described it, funny enough, knowing that I was coming on today, I was talking to my wife about this morning, about that campaign and really how it came to life. And of course, there is the marketing brochure version of, this was all this, and it all worked beautifully. Over here, you had people scrabbling like you would not believe to make it work. And rather interestingly, and I don't think I'm breaking any taboos here, but rather interestingly, they decided in the early days of the campaign to work with a printer of labels using HP Indigo. This is where the story is wrapped around HP.
Okay.
But with a chocolate manufacturer in Germany. Now, great. They could do this. Indigo was installed, and thank you very much. And then at the very last minute, they realized that the chocolate manufacturer did not want glass in their factory.
Seems like a wise decision.
There you go.
Yeah.
So at that point, the head scratching began, and they needed to have somebody that could handle glass but didn't manufacture chocolate. And that's when they knocked on my door. So we had this wonderful situation where you ordered a personalized bottle of Coca-Cola. The label was printed in Germany. It was then flown every evening to the UK. We then had to match that label with the order that came in from the website, then attach the label to the bottle that, we did the lovely old plastic glass bottle, package it, send it back out to wherever it came from, which may have been Germany, by the way. So the technological innovative thing actually took 5 days from order to receipt, which is not bad, but it's not next day. By this stage in all of our lives, we'd all grown accustomed to next day. When I'm old enough to remember when 28 days was a bit of a boom, whoever invented the internet, if we could go again today, right, nobody ever write down the words next day guaranteed delivery, because it's just nonsense. So anyway, that whole check, but with all of that working and all of us paddling like swans underneath the surface,
yes,
we sold 1.6 million bottles of Coca-Cola in 3 months, all done by hand. And
the workflow. I mean, figuring out, workflow. Like, we talk a lot about workflow just because of the nature of the business that we're in. It's kind of a little bit of an unsung hero, right? Like, the marketing gets the glamorous, everybody feels warm and fuzzy part, but the workflow that you have to figure out, and the logistical part of, perhaps glass and chocolate don't mix well together. How are we going to pull this off? And putting a plan in place and understanding logistically and timing and all the steps that have to go in between to get that warm and fuzzy feeling at the end. Absolutely. And we hear the words workflow solutions, but I focused on the solution, because workflow suggests that it's nice and organized and you just push a button and it'll all work, and that's fine. Not true. So we made it work, because like any business, you do. And even the day when, they had one job, right, at Coca-Cola, was to send us bottles of Coca-Cola with no front label on. That's all they had to do. And the first lorry arrived on the first day of the campaign, and we opened up the side of the lorry, and there they were, 40,000 bottles of Coca-Cola with a front label on. So they had one job. So that got sent back to Holland, of course. We have a Coca-Cola factory about 30 miles away from where we were based, but the bottles had to come from Holland because of the intricacies of their supply chain. So, all of these things, but nobody sees that. Nobody needs to see that. In the same way that you don't need to know how electricity works when you put the light switch on, you just need to know that it works. So it's kind of interesting in hindsight, looking back at how we made, 2 yogurts and a piece of string and turned it into a phone.
Yeah, and it takes me back to the very first comments that we made about moving fast enough. And I think about, what is that, 13 years ago, quick math, to today. Like, you would think that it still sounds fascinating. That whole thing still sounds fascinating to me 13 years later. And you would think that we would have taken it to a whole nother level already from a personalization perspective. And it's interesting because I still see marketers that we work with still struggle with it. Struggle trying to figure out, we have all of this data, what do we do with it? And they're still hesitant to go personal. They're still, they figured out how to do it digitally, but doing it in print just seems overwhelming and scary. What do you think that's about? Why do you think that is?
I think we go back to what we talked about at the top of the podcast, really, that some people are just scared of change, and that fear is pervasive in some cases, and therefore the idea that anything needs to be done differently in order to work is enough for some people to not even try. And I don't mean that as a criticism; it's just a
Yeah.
fact. You know, and you know, we all know that I can't remember the name of the curve, but the early adopters and the and all of the people on that curve and what have you. Well, it's a human trait. We're actually hardwired as human beings to be a little bit negative about everything. It keeps us alive. So a little bit. Somebody once said it's stopping us from stroking wolves. When we were cavemen. So get your arm ripped off. So we are naturally leaning back at any given point. So the lean in is quite rare, which is why the fast movers on that curve are usually in the less than 10% of any businesses will be out there really pushing the envelope. The irony is the technology enables it, but the behavior doesn't. So, until you match the rate of innovation of technology with the rate of innovation of the evolution of your mind, you're never going to be in line with it. So there'll be some people today that can do stuff that you wouldn't have imagined of even yesterday, and they've worked out how to do it. And then there'll be some people doing what they did 30 years ago because they know how to do that and it works. And so that's the gap for me in not just the print industry, by the way. This is any manufacturing industry has got different rates of speed of travel. I think when I look back now and even talking about it, I didn't realize how revolutionary what we were doing was. And ironically, 13 years later, kind of still is.
It is. Yeah.
And that for me, when you consider how far we've all come in every other part of our working lives, it's a bit of a misnomer, isn't it? That you think, and Coca-Cola have just done this campaign again, by the way, but they didn't do the online piece. They just did the store piece. But the only reason they did it was because of TikTok, and they had a natural amplification that they didn't have 13 years ago. 13 years ago, we didn't really have social media. So the context for that gap of time, it sounds easy when you just throw away 13 years, doesn't it? But look at what's changed in those 13 years. And you wonder why, as human beings and digital human beings that we all now are, that all of these things can't just work straight away. But there's one thing must be holding them back, and I suspect that's a little bit of fear of change.
Yeah. I think about, again, celebrating a year ago.
Yes.
AI seemed like this very, out there topic even just a year ago. And now I think back to the conversations I was having at D-Scoop last week. It is insane. But I'm also thinking about your point about early adopters versus those that will just keep doing what they're doing. And I had this conversation. Dave Rosendahl has been on Colorbar a couple of times. He was talking about what he has personally done with AI. He's basically created this AI assistant, which I'm obsessed with. I'm like, I need Amber. Her name is Amber. I need Amber in my life. But when I look at, again, just what has happened with that in the last year and how certain people are using it in a crazy way and how some of us are like, I'm going to have it do a little, I'm going to try it just for a little bit. It's going to be crazy to see.
It is crazy.
What that looks like even just a year from now.
We all accept things at different speeds, and that's never not been true since the dawn of time. I have a brilliant photograph which I'll share with you of when the motor car was invented, and people all had horses, and so most of those people went, "Oh, we don't need a car, thank you, because we're fine with horses." And then the people that bought the cars just because they wanted to be have something new and shiny. I've got a photograph of a guy towing a car with his horse because he didn't want to give up the past, but he wanted to embrace the future. So we are typical, and the digital era that we're living in, we're quite good at running towards shiny new things, whether we need them or not. And then working out, I read at the weekend about how much money has been invested in AI without any purpose, just so that they've got it. And a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses, in that regard. So I think this will all settle down as it always has. I believe that AI is part of a toolkit. You can't have a spanner without a mechanic. Let's call it a wrench. So AI for me is a blend of artificial intelligence and actual intelligence. And if you get that right, then the future will be just fine.
It'll be just, I agree. It'll be just fine. And, just to kind of tack onto that. So when we started having this conversation last year, and it was our first AI conversation, and we had the whole, do you feel like you're cheating?
Yes.
Moment, and what that looks like. And then, probably good that we're sitting down because I actually just built my own bot, like Kim chat box, so it actually writes in my language. So when I'm putting out stuff, and I had someone help me do it who's kind of like a social media engineer, so to speak, and all of the rules, it was like 13 pages of rules that they knew as to don't write sentences like this because it becomes very obvious if somebody's written something on your behalf. So yes, now I have my own Kim writer.
Wow.
I have my own Kim writer through Claude AI.
Claude,
Claude.
I learned about, I talked about last week
Yep.
more than once.
Claude's the
Betsy,
new kid.
you need to lean across and just check that Kim's actually there.
Yes.
I know.
Here, I have a pulse.
Are you the AI kid
There
or
you
are
go.
you my
There you
Kim?
go.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going Star Trek, and I'm going to kind of just come in and out.
I love it. Well, we cannot wrap up this conversation without talking about, I think you're the founder of Evolution. Just
Yes.
to wine, to Coke
I
bottles,
think that
to
was Charles
labels.
Darwin, just to say so. But anyway, yeah, keep going.
But now, we've talked about you now becoming an author.
Yep.
You're a speaker. You have turned what you did with Coke into an opportunity for us to all learn about that opportunity. So talk about what your next evolution looks like for Rich.
It's really strange, actually, because nobody will ever believe me, and you'd have to ask my mother to corroborate this. But I was the shyest child that you would ever meet anywhere in the world, and in many cases, there's bits of me that still are. There's certain situations that shyness comes very much to the front of my mind. And for example, I was early today. You'll notice to our call, but I'm always early to everywhere because I don't like walking into a room full of people. However, I'm very comfortable because it's under my control to stand up then in front of that room full of people and talk. So I'm a complete, sort of antithesis of myself in that I do the things that most people are scared of, but the things that most people don't even think about, I don't like. So it's where that sort of position in my head is, and that's led me into this world of communication. Public speaking is something that I love. I stand up on stage quite freely and do that, whereas most people have a mortal fear of it.
But
the
you
world
have
of
a good
podcasting,
story to tell. Wait a
well,
minute.
there is that, but you still need to be a good storyteller.
You do. You do have to be. Yes.
And I didn't know that, genuinely. I'm not being cute. I 30 years in the wine business was practicing telling stories because you have to romanticize the notion of wine and the vineyards and the grapes and all the lovely stuff you talk about. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that my MBA was in storytelling because I was in my head I was just finding a way of selling what I did. But I do know the wiring in me as a human being, my brain is wired to my mouth in such a way that I get to a conversation just a fraction of a second quicker than most people. It's why I never got beaten up when I was at school because I was the funny guy. You never beat up the funny guy, right? He just makes you laugh. So I was that guy, and I still am that guy. So I never run dry of words. And so if somebody said to me, "What do you do for a living?" I sell words in different forms. It turns out one of those is now written, but most of it is spoken. I've been successful as a speaker over the last 12 years, but really enjoyed it. Podcasting has come along and just means that I can avoid airports, which is brilliant. And then the book really is a conscious stream of thought. I almost, if I could have dictated it, it would have sounded like it does written. That's how I write as I speak, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I'm passionate about words. I'm passionate about communication. I think we're in danger as a society of losing the lost art of conversation. And the thing that we're doing now quite freely and chitter-chattering, and yes, we're being recorded, but it doesn't really matter. We can have this conversation in a bar or in a departure lounge at an airport. Just the ability to do what we're doing today is in danger of being lost by the advent of children using their thumbs all the time. And so as a parent, first and foremost, and I drilled this into my daughter, and she's actually really good at it. We wanted to find a way that the next generation of kids could have the same advantages that we did. And by advantage, I mean being forced to think, being forced to be imaginative. There's no such thing as bored. All of the things that we were taught as kids were true, right? Yes. Absolutely true. We didn't think so at the time, but we know that now. So I've created a world of personalized children's books called You Are the Star, largely to encourage children to read, but mainly to encourage them to dream. Because I think when you're in a scenario, when you're in your backyard and you're throwing a ball around or you're whatever it is that you're doing, in your head, you're dreaming of the scenario where that is actually coming true in your mind's eye. For me, it was tennis. I used to have a wall at home where I was as a kid, and I painted a net, the height of the net on the wall with a chalk line, and I hit a ball against that for days and weeks on end. But in my head, I was on centre court at Wimbledon playing the men's singles final.
Of course.
And and strangely enough, I always won, which will never happen. But the plausibility of this, because I think children are very good at dreaming, but the dream should have some kind of plausibility towards a reality. Somebody is going to win that match. Somebody's going to win that gold medal. Somebody's going to hold that winning puck, whoever it is. And whenever you hear sportsmen interviewed after they've been successful in their chosen sport, they typically say the same thing back to the interviewer. I've been dreaming of this since I was 5 years old. So this business is to inspire that imagination, spark those dreams, get them reading. And when you've got the words, you can use them. I have all the words because I read books as a kid. If we can, and my daughter has the same, I'm sure you are the same. You get that vocabulary from learning it, and I'm on a mission to do that.
I love that. I mean, I remember the backyard. I remember my mother being like, "Go entertain yourself." I got a lot of "go entertain yourself," which meant making things up. Like, you made up stories, you made up adventures. You went on them. You were the person who was going to make some great discovery in the backyard that was going to put you on the front of National Geographic or something. I majored in art history, so
But whatever it is, and it doesn't, it doesn't need to be sport. I focused on sport because that it had a big audience. So it was an obvious way. But we do ballet, we do cookery, we do scouting, we do also wherever those kids want to take themselves in their mind, they should be allowed to. And unfortunately, one of the biggest downsides of smartphones, of which there are many, but one of them is taking away boredom. And they're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and it's not firing their imagination.
Yeah, the power of boredom is,
It's powerful.
It's powerful. The power of
100%.
I don't know how many of you heard it, but it's like, don't come back till it's dark.
Yep, don't come back till it's dark.
Yeah. Or
Figure it out.
don't come back until you're a professional footballer.
Whatever.
It is.
But no, it was a scary statistic, and I'm sure I will say it wrong. But they were talking about last week. They were sharing statistics about print, because obviously, touching a book and getting away from the screen. But they were saying that the IQ of children has gone down for the first time in decades. Like, I think it's ever gone down until now, and it's because of children just being in front of the screen and not reading and not focusing on learning and just having stuff thrown at them. So I was like sharing it with parents, going, "Oh, read them a book tonight, please." Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Screens have a part to play in our lives.
Sure.
It's a balance. It's a blend. But we're still at the shiny object end of the curve, where children think that the best thing to have is a phone, and it isn't. The best thing to have is a book. But actually, you can have a phone as well. So I'm not here as the Grinch trying to take digital away from the next generation.
Yes.
But I think that balance is so important.
So where can say the name of the book company again?
So the whole idea is that the child is personalized within the story. They become the star of that book.
Yes.
The business is called You Are the Star.
You Are the Star.
You Are
And
the
can
Star book.
people do this today? We can
Online today.
online today.
Okay.
I love it. And the book
And I
we
was gonna
keep
say,
referring to.
is there a
we
sneak peek
When
about
are we
that?
going to be able to read what you thought? You said you thought it was just going to be a book about print personalization, and when Kim and I read the excerpt that you gave us, it was very much more than that.
Yes.
So excited for you to get it out for all of us to read.
Thank
so
you.
What's
Yes.
And I genuinely, as I said before we started recording, I hadn't considered that. I'd looked at this through the lens of, it's the chronological story of the evolution of personalized print. That's a long title. So we called it Your Name Here, and hopefully
it.
people will see, how this came to be, really, how this crazy world that we're in today actually started 20 years ago in its first iteration. And as you said before, personalization is 1,000 years old. But digital print isn't. So it's the evolution of this period of time when digital print enabled brands and consumers, and we can all do it now. We're all creative now because we can all sit on our digital devices and make anything. Somebody then has to be able to make it and send it back to us. Print on demand has become a whole new world. Because realistically now, it used to be supply and demand, didn't it, in business, and it's now demand and supply. So I think if you can get on the right side of that, that pivot point in your own business journey, go see what your customers want and give them that.
Yeah. Well, this was amazing. I was gonna throw some quick hit questions at you just to wrap up.
Go for it. Go
Okay.
for it. I'm ready.
Wine, white or red?
Red.
See, I'm a white.
So-
Kim's a white.
Actually, I like all wine.
Yeah.
Bottle of each then, Betsy.
Say that again.
A bottle of each then.
A bottle
of each,
Perfect.
yes.
Okay, this one's kind of tongue in cheek. Coke or Pepsi?
Who's watching this? Where is this going out? Hang on, let's do two versions. Coke. Pepsi.
What your customers want,
Give
exactly.
your customers what they want.
And we've talked about this too, and I wrote this down before any of these conversations started. Digital or printed book?
I would say both, and actually take audio as well, because I think you can immerse yourself in somebody's voice. You know, the classic Harry Potter with Stevie Fry as the narrator. I love the books because I heard them that way. So I think, again, it's a blend. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's an and. So I would, the digital, physical, and audible, I think would be the perfect.
I love that.
I like to feel the pages.
I know.
I like to
and
feel
I
them.
love
Me
to,
too.
I've always said this, I love putting it on the shelf when I'm done.
Yep.
I don't know what that's about, but I love
Yeah.
I like seeing them and the
It's
whole
like
thing.
an accomplishment. It's
Yeah.
like, I did this.
Yeah, it's like me checking something off my to-do list is very rewarding for me. Okay, we had Francis McMahon on at the very beginning of this year of Colorbar, and we'll wrap up with this question. His comment was, print is life, and I love that. What does that mean to you hearing that?
I can only agree. He's coming to join me on Print Island in a couple of weeks' time, so
yay.
we'll have that
Tell him we said
conversation.
hi.
But I think, and I did a recording last week, and we were talking about this whole ridiculous annual debate of print is dead, and I'd actually just like to swap that last word out and just put print is different. And if it's different, it will inspire curiosity to look at it, because we miss it in our vision, because it's been in our world since birth, since our first breath. We were shown something that was printed. So we've lost sight of it as a device, and I think we need to bring that back into people's consciousness. So it is life, because imagine a life without print, but I think we need to be able to see it more. So the debate has to change from is print dead, which is nonsense, to print is different. Let me show you why.
Ooh, that's good.
We're ending there.
We are ending there. That might be a mic drop right there.
I've only got a pen.
That works. Love it.
Rich, this was awesome, and I cannot wait for your name here to come out. Keep us posted on when that happens. We will make sure everybody that we know knows about it. And thank you for sharing the story, and not just about personalization, but of evolution and how to take what life gives you and run with it. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely to spend this time with both of you, so
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for watching Colorbar, and we will see you again soon.